Man, the wildest thing that I've ever seen happen in insurance. When you've been around a number of mergers and acquisitions, you get to see all the different interesting ways in which cultures come together.
Uh-huh.
And I think one of the wildest things that I seen was a bunch of Americans trying to adapt to French culture, right? So, when AXA bought Excel, I'm no longer with the company, so I guess I could speak more publicly about this stuff now. But when AXA bought Excel, we had one culture, right? And I came from the Excel side of the house, and I had gone through a merger with Excel and Catlin, and but it was really they called it a merger of equals, and it really was, right? Like culturally, we were very similar. We had everybody had their own politics and things like that, but the culture was similar. Where the AXA merger was totally different, right? And I thought I knew what governance was. I had no clue what governance was until, Mother AXA came to the house. And I don't mean that to sound as a negative thing. There was some really positive stuff to that. But man, what a culture shock it was.
What was one of the big shocks with that whole?
Well, first off, it starts with little things, right? So a French accent, when your ear's not tuned to it, takes a little bit getting used to, right? From from an American perspective. Mm-hmm. And so there was a little bit of that, but it really was it seemed like the amount of governance, how there had to be every time I turned around, I thought I knew how to do my job, but I didn't, because I kept finding out there was another committee I was supposed to have talked to before I came to talk to these people, right? And it was just it was very different. It was very different than what I was used to personally. It was I was highly empowered. I was an executive. I made decisions. I paid the price at times when those weren't good decisions. I see where this podcast goes. I probably just set myself up for another question. But that was that, just having to get used to a new structure and a new way of making decisions through more consensus driven decision making and stuff was kind of a big shift for me.
Gotcha. And who are you?
Oh, by the way, yeah, I'm Stacey Brown, and I work with InsurTech Hartford now. It's an organization I started back in 2017ish, and I work out of Hartford, Connecticut, and I'm an insurance dude.
Insurance dudes are on a mission to escape being handcuffed by our agencies.
How? By uncovering the secrets to creating a predictable, consistent, and profitable agency sales machine.
I am Craig Pretzinger.
I am Jason Feldman.
We are agents.
We are insurance dudes.
Boom! Love it.
Welcome.
Yeah, that's hard. So, I mean,
would you say that the culture's? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go.
Yeah. You go.
I was just going to ask if you thought the culture clash was a pain in the AXA.
Look, I don't mean to make it sound like it's bad. It's just different, right? And what I think added to it for me personally was all the work that I'd been doing on the InsurTech side of the house for the last several years. And I was spending a lot of time with startups, small organizations. I was running my own organization, essentially, with InsurTech Hartford. And if I saw something, I pivoted, I moved, I did it. I went in that direction, right? So as the controls became tighter on one end of the equation, like through my corporate job, like the autonomy was increasing in my entrepreneurial side of the house. And so these were just you talk about two legs and two canoes. Well, the canoes were going in different directions, and it was starting to, be uncomfortable for me. So, but like I said, I don't mean to make it sound like what was happening there was bad or negative. There's a lot of really smart people. They're very methodical about what they're doing and why they're doing it and how they're doing it. And, I came to realize a long time ago that when you're like a small, scrappy startup, you've got a lot more to gain and not a lot to lose on a relative basis, right? But if you're a multi-billion-dollar, or in the case of AXA, $1 trillion, have $1 trillion balance sheet, right? man, anything you gain is only minute in comparison to how much is at stake, right? So the amount of controls you have to have in place, the bigger you get. To me, it just makes sense.
Right.
It's interesting. Yeah.
So
Because now it's at the mature point of its life cycle. And that's I guess why it ends up being declined at some point, right? Because you can't really, at some point, it's like too expensive to try to grow. Like, how do you grow?
Well, M&A, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Right.
You spin off the underperforming assets and free up capital to buy new ones, right?
Right. It's a totally different way of operating. It's just interesting, because we're down here at the very micro level.
Right.
And they probably try to minimize the amount of accidents.
Aha. Yes.
I was holding on to that one for a while.
You probably wrote that one down last night, didn't you?
Oh, I was holding on to that for like 10 minutes here. And I'm like, when can I use this?
There'll be a few more. Spoiler alert.
Oh, there's plenty more where that came from, I'm sure.
Yeah. Don't think that was the last one if you're listening at home.
Yeah. Whoever can count how many acts of jokes we will make, report to the Idudes email, and you will receive a prize. That's right.
I like it.
All right, Stacey. So break it down. Let's talk about the Hartford InsurTech.
InsurTech Hartford. Yeah.
What the heck is it? And we keep putting it back.
It's easy to do. It happens all the time, and it didn't help that for a while we had something in town called the Hartford InsurTech Hub, and people were confusing our two organizations all the time. And but InsurTech Hartford is an organization I started. Really, I'd say that the earliest days go back to 2016 when I was, seeing the trends that were going on in the industry around InsurTech. Right, it wasn't even called InsurTech yet. It was just like, hey, investors are putting money into startups that are tech driven and they're going to disrupt the whole industry. And everyone was like, oh my God, what's going to happen to? And when I was looking at it, I was like, hey, what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the .com days. And I was like, I want to be a part of this somehow, but there was nothing like to be a part of. So I just started reaching out to people in my network that I knew and saying, hey, we should get together and talk about this stuff. And that's kind of how it took off. And so it's kind of grown a lot. We eventually gave it the name InsurTech Hartford, and it was really about community building around the Hartford area insurance community, which is super strong. There's like 50,000 jobs within a 1 hour radius, and all working for the insurance industry. And so it's pretty rich insurance, resource rich environment. But there was no InsurTech anything, right? So I just started having meetings and people started showing up, and it just kept growing. And the funniest thing was the pandemic actually caused acceleration, because instead of like stopping and focusing on my day job, I said, I'm going to go online and I'm going to start, running virtual events. And then we started having audiences that were way larger than anything we were doing in person. So, and it became more of a global brand. So that's where we are today, right? We're still a community, but it's more of a global branded community. And I did leave, AXA in 2023, and I've just been focusing on this community building stuff. And so this year I've been working with partnerships and helping launch communities with InsurTech Atlanta, InsurTech Chicago. So we're taking the lessons that I've learned, the playbooks and the resources and things of that sort, and just helping build other communities.
Super cool. So talk about building the communities. What do the communities rally around? Besides just the InsurTech, what's the goal? What's the pursuit?
Well, that's really it, right? It's about how, for me, I feel that it's about driving innovation in the industry, right? So I spent a lot of years doing that on the carrier side as we kind of drained the pond on that one, I think. But now I'm doing it from the outside, right? And there are so many different angles to the insurance industry, and they're all ripe for innovation. And the thing is that you can't do it on your own, right? And in the olden days, we used to sit in our cubes and, if we were being innovative, if we researched something on the internet and brought it into a conference room and talked with our peers about it, right? But nowadays, the ability to mash up and bring people together with different backgrounds and skills and stuff like that is amazing. Not to mention the way it helps to bring talent into the industry as well, right? So entrepreneurship and innovation has brought a lot of new talent into the industry over the last few years. And I don't know that people are really thinking of it that way, right? But we know that the insurance industry has a bit of a talent crunch, whether you're on the distribution side or the carrier side or anywhere in between. The future it isn't looking as bright when you look at bodies coming into relative bodies going out of the industry. So certainly some of that slack is going to be picked up on the technologies and the innovations coming out. So all the more reason why we've got to push the needle forward on innovation. But the communities themselves are really just about bringing those people together and making those connections happen. We do other things too, like we do hackathons. We have an annual pitch event, and we do a lot of partnership and collaboration events with other organizations too.
Cool.
So it's to get the information out about all the different InsurTech solutions that are out there.
That is definitely a part of it. It's really about putting opportunities together, putting people together to create opportunities, right? Whether it's startups looking for VC, an experienced person in the industry looking for their next role, and students. We do a lot of work with getting students engaged and involved in the stuff that we're doing. I've been helping out with teaching at University of Connecticut at times. Got involved this summer in an actuarial boot camp for high school students organized by a local organization called CTIFS. So it's more than just the work that happens at our events. It's really ties back to community, but it's all meant to help drive the industry forward.
Interesting.
Love it. Yeah, that is interesting. What kind of trends are you seeing? Like, I'm sure that when you started this, that it kind of built up a unique angle, right? Like, I'm sure it's not exactly how you started it, right? So what kind of things have you seen come about from putting all these cool people together?
Well, I'd say one of the wildest things here also is that I didn't set out to do anything. In fact, earlier today I was asked, so like, what's the ultimate goal and objective of, InsurTech Hartford, Chicago, Atlanta, etc. Like, what's the ultimate thing? I'm like, I wish I can actually tell you that because from the very beginning, I didn't set out to do any of the stuff that I'm doing today, right? I go back to my story there where I just wanted to get together as an insurance IT guy. I wanted to get together and talk with other insurance IT guys about what is this, how is tech going to disrupt our industry, right? And it's just, I've kept an open mind to the things that come at me. And so I think the opportunities that's created are things that, like, rewind the clock to 2015. If you would have told me like, oh, you're going to be skiing with a group of investors and startup CEOs that you pulled together with where the people in the room had a total market cap of $6 billion, I'd have been like, haha, yeah, right. Like, I don't even ski, right? And that's the honest truth, right? So our first ski trip event that I collaborated with David Gritz, who does the InsurTech New York community with Tony Liu. David and I partnered on this ski trip event first in 2022. When I agreed to do it with him, I said to him, I said, oh, great. Now the only thing I have to do is learn how to ski because I had never skied in my life, right? And it's just things like that, the opportunities that have come out of just moving forward with an open mind and asking myself, how can I, instead of thinking of why it's hard or why I can't, right?
Yeah.
And also, I'd say mindset-wise, I didn't realize how many years I'll say the other thing, right? So I realize now that we can all just make more pie, right? When in the corporate environment, it was kind of like there was an annual budget. This is what we were spending in IT this year. And really the only way people felt like they were getting ahead in their IT careers when they got bigger slices of the pie. But because the pie was fixed, in order for someone to get a bigger piece, that meant somebody else had to be getting a smaller piece, right? It was like really hard to have that growth mindset that I think that's a big part of what has driven me out in entrepreneur land too, is the fact that, hey, you know what? You do the same thing I do. That's cool. How do we collaborate? How do we do it together? Maybe we can make the pie bigger, right? So just a very different world.
Yeah, the corporate world is protect the pie and then keep layering with more managers. I don't understand that whole idea, but it's tough.
It's also an indication that you're doing well, right?
Right. Yeah.
You guys know the Peter Principle? The Peter Principle. Well, I guess I'd have to Google it to make sure I get it right, but it's something along the lines of in corporate, people get promoted to their highest level of incompetence.
That's
so
awesome.
Once you get to a level where you're not getting promotions anymore, it's because you're not competent enough for the next level. So
right
you're at the peak of where you're reaching your incompetence.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And then I'm sure time has to play in that, because at some point I've been with them so long, I should just be promoted. That comes in where it's
that's part of the mentality of that world, right? Where it's, I don't want to say entitlement, because people work hard and they want to feel like they're growing. They want to feel, sometimes it's hard to tell is it change that you want, or is it actual growth? And is it growth in what? In corporate world, they do a really good job of keeping us focused on this thing they call a title, right?
Yeah.
So so that whole manager concept, right? It ties back to that as well, right?
It's funny. Like they really sell
means
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, just title means so much, right?
Yeah.
In entrepreneurial world, call me what you want.
Janitor. Call me janitor. I don't care. It is interesting because and my wife works in that world, and like when she's, when I give ideas, because usually she doesn't want an idea, but of course I offer the idea.
I'm sure that goes over well.
And you know how that goes. However, it's just the way that she'll play it back is it's always, oh no, you don't understand. It doesn't work like that here. You can't do that. It's like, well, you can't do that because you're accepting that. You can do whatever.
How does that go over?
It doesn't go over well.
I mean, it is tricky. I understand. I lived it for 20 plus years, right? And I understand is what I could say. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's good. It's, there's a safety net around it all.
Yeah.
It's highly structured. And it's really good for having a framework for people to come out and be solid contributors in society and do well for themselves, right? Not everybody is willing to, throw the hat on, jump on the horse, and just start heading west, right? Like that's scary crap. I could tell you firsthand.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's a good point. It's probably, the vast majority of people fit better into that role where they need the structure, they need the direction, right?
Yeah, it helps.
There's the crazies that are like, I don't care. I'd rather work 80 hours to not have to work 40 hours.
Right.
Yeah, I remember an entrepreneur guy I met in Asia once. He told me something along the lines of, he used to work in corporate and then he was an entrepreneur when I met him, and he said that he felt that a dollar he earned working for himself was better than $2 earned, working in a corporate world, right? And that's just how some people feel. Again, it doesn't make people in corporate bad or wrong. It's just, it's different, right? And your comfort zone is typically on one side of that fence or the other.
Yeah. Well, and the $2 is tied to exchanging. You do this, you get $2 versus I choose to do this, I'll get $1. And if you're entrepreneurial, you choose. You're not letting anybody else tell you. And that's, I think, what.
And if you don't want to show up that day, you still get the $1.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.